Hello everyone. Welcome to this RMS support training. Today will be a train the trainer session for RMS administrators. Thank you all for attending. If you have any questions throughout today's session, please go ahead and type that question into the Q&A area of this WebEx. We have some RMS Support Center folks on standby ready to take care of those as they come in. We'll also have time throughout the presentation where I'll pause for any questions that need answering. So feel free to unmute at that time when we do that and ask your questions then. The slides for this presentation can be found on our website, rms.usace.army.mil. That link is available on the references slide in this presentation, along with some other helpful reference and demo links. These live slides may have a few updates, a few minor updates that aren't included in those slides, but we will make sure that those updated slides are added to the website by close of business today. We've also linked our YouTube channel, help desk contact information, and the KM portal link on these slides in the references slide as well. So if you'd like to access any of that, those links are available. Any Q&A and discussion held during the training today will also be added at the end of the slides after the training has concluded. This session is also being recorded, and this video will be posted on our YouTube channel in the following days. All right, so let's get started. Before we get started, here is some preliminary guidance for how to take in this type of training. This course is designed and intended for district administrators. While there aren't any prerequisites for the course, you are expected to have a pretty wide understanding of entering data in RMS and the governing regulations that are followed within the application. And following this training, you should expect to gain a deeper understanding of how RMS works, why it works the way it does, and hopefully gain some insight on how to pass on training to other RMS users. Here's our agenda for today. First, we're going to do a recap of the recent patch release updates since our last Train the Trainer session. Then we'll move on to the primary topics for this session, which is going to touch on the district library, staff records, transmittal log under the Submittals tab, document packages throughout RMS, finances, and finally some QA/QC updates. After that, we'll open up the floor for any questions or discussion to take place. So first up, we're going to be reviewing some significant updates that were made in these patch releases. We have patch 481, 491, and 495. 495 was just recently released, I think last Thursday. So first, we had a general update to a lot of the document packages throughout RMS. This update did not include all the document packages throughout RMS, but we'll review that later. Buttons have been added outside the document packages for submission, acceptance, return, and completion of all the document packages within that document package data grid. If any empty document packages exist in the grid, those are going to be deleted upon clicking any of these buttons for taking action on the document packages in the document package data grid. For the government, the accept and return buttons will be available for contractor submitted document packages, while the complete button will be available for government generated document packages. For contractors, the submit button will be available for submission to the government. The exceptions for this update is going to include the modules where accept, reject, or return and completion actions are dictated by the work performed in the module itself. So those areas not included in that are going to be the request for information, contractor payrolls, correspondence, exposure hours, hazard analysis, and then the QC daily and QC dredge reports in government mode only. So, as an example, once an RFI has been completed and submitted to the government for review, instead of having to independently submit the document package as well, that's going to automatically be done when the RFI is completed and submitted. When the government accepts or returns the RFI, the document package will also automatically be accepted or returned. Because of this, the buttons on the document package data grid that we just reviewed and the buttons within the document package for individual document package actions will not be available for those areas. Those actions can be performed using the available submit, accept, complete, and or return and reject actions available within the actual module. Our next update is for the addition of revision history in RMS. The revision history was also accompanied by the view button. You can either double click on an item in the revision history list to view it, or single click and click on the view button. When you click on the view button, it's going to show the state of the item before the action listed was taken. So when you're looking at a submit revision, the draft view of that item before submission will be presented. And the revision is going to be presented in a restricted read-only view. So it's just to view it, no edits can be made. All right. Just as a quick note, if there was revision history captured on the screen in some way before this revision history was released, there should be a legacy revision history button to the left of the revision history table. And that can be used to view any legacy information that is no longer on the screen and is now in the revision history. Moving on from revision history, we had an update to the contract notification control module. Text message notifications have been disabled in RMS. Notifications through email and within the application itself do still remain active, though. Next, we had an update to the contract menu when a contract has documents returned from PCF. So for certain PCF errors, RMS is going to provide a prompt like this one when a user tries to enter that contract. These errors shown here are going to be the only errors that cause this to come up. Any action taken here in this screen is going to take the user directly to just the contract menu of the contract they're trying to access. To investigate these documents, you can look at them in the contract file or in the respective module where the document resides. If there are any questions about these errors, users will reach out to their RMS admin. There may be an issue with getting things over to PCF from RMS. And if they have issues, and if the admins have issues, then they can certainly reach out to the help desk. There may also be an issue with PCF itself, and in that case, the issue is going to need to be corrected within PCF and not in RMS. So for example, right here, PCF cabinet not found, that is going to be fixed in PCF. And then contract/project is inactive in PCF, that will also be corrected in PCF. An update was also made to improve the translation of errors from CFMS to RMS. These errors are going to be defined in the RMS error messages in simpler terms that will hopefully be a little more helpful in determining what's wrong and how it can be fixed. The two download errors on the left side are from the contract finances module, and the error shown in the lower right corner comes from the CFMS errors occurring on a progress payment. All right, this next update was made for modifications that are going to be completed and loaded into PCF outside of RMS. If that is the case, and this checkbox is checked in a modification, instead of the document status within the document package being document not ready, which could be a little misleading, it will have the document not required in PCF status. All right, next we had a couple of updates to the real property import template. a new RPU ID column, and the funding org FY column was added to the template spreadsheet. The RPU ID column is optional, but it's available for entry if that value is known. However, the funding org FY column is going to be required for each real property item entered into the template. If you've already downloaded this template before and you have it stored on your computer, make sure that you've gone and re-downloaded that since the template has changed. There was also an update to the network analysis schedule module, as well as the contract setup module. So in contract setup, in the Submittals/schedule tab, the requires the contractor to use actual start and finish dates from the QC reports option has been updated to be the disregard NAS imported actual start/finish dates. Use dates entered into QC daily reports instead. Also, when this checkbox is selected in contract setup, the network analysis schedule module is also going to contain a note regarding this setting for the contract. So we can see here QC daily entered dates will be honored and the checkbox is checked. And then QC daily entered dates will be overwritten and the checkbox is unchecked. So the note on the network analysis schedule module is going to update depending on how that option is set in contract setup. There was also an update to the CUI tab in contract setup and also an update to the handling of the PNM and POM documents. Those documents are considered CUI, so that guidance was added here to the CUI tab. If you print or disseminate a PNM or POM document, then those documents should be accompanied by a CUI cover page. One of those cover pages is available in the contract reports module. If you go into that module and just search CUI cover page, it should come right up. Next up, a new photo albums tab was added to the contract file module to allow users to organize photos into albums, whether that be pictures from the same work site or pictures from a certain period of time. The only photos that can be added here are those that have already been added to the contract, either in a document package in one of the modules or as part of the contract status photos. You can also link a photo album to a specific feature of work in the contract and or specify a location for the album. Another update that was made for photos in a contract in RMS was for the contract status module in the contract status photos tab. A new image editor button has been added here to allow the editing of the current status photo. In this area, that can only be performed on the current status photo set. After clicking on the button, the image editor window will come up and you'll be presented with a bunch of options for editing the image selected. The image editor is also available within document packages. So when an image is added to the document package, the buttons are going to change to allow the viewing and editing of the document of the photo selected. Apologies. If an image is not selected or another attachment is selected, the buttons will adjust accordingly. Next, still in contract status, the COR comments tab has been renamed to be the field staff working notes tab. And the field here has also been updated to be just the field notes field. This update was made in the hopes of clarifying what this tab can be used for. Any information already entered in the COR comments, what was the COR comments tab, will still remain. Only the title of the tab and the field were updated. We've also added a note here to make sure it's clear that this is an optional field. It is not required to be filled in, only if it's helpful or desired. Any information entered here can be exported into a report that's been made available in the contract reports module. That's going to be the field staff working notes report. And next, this update was for the request for information or RFI module in government mode specifically. A reminder was added to the government response tab to make it clear that once this is completed, all the information is entered and the COR/ACO approved checkbox is checked. Please remember that any information entered here is going to be visible to the contractor upon completion. Secondary reviewer remarks will not be visible to the contractor. Only what's shown here on the slide and the shared document package will be viewable to the contractor after the government completes the RFI. Also, please note that even if this is a government-generated RFI, the contractor will still be able to view all the information that's been added in here once it has been COR/ACO approved. And finally, our last update to review was an update to some views within the Finances tab. The unit of measure column was added to these views to display that UOM from as it was set in CFMS, not in RMS. So please keep in mind that the UOM in RMS doesn't have to match the UOM in CFMS, but it is best business practice to have those two match. As long as the dollar amount matches, it should not matter too much what the unit of measure is set at in the two different programs. So first up, we're looking at the award CLINs. When you select to view an award CLIN, the unit of measure column is going to be available in the obligations for this CLIN table. And then when selecting to view the funding, again, in the obligations for this CLIN table, the unit of measure column will be available. And the same goes for current CLINs. And finally, the unit of measure column was also added to two areas within contract modifications. First is going to be the SF30-1 tab within the contract line items or CLINs, changed by this modification data grid. And then also within the release mod tab on the CLIN changes / obligations for payment data grid. So those were our recent updates to RMS since the last Train the Trainer session we had. So let's get into our session for today. Again, here's the list of items we're going to be covering in today's training. We're going to look at the district library and the staff record at the district level. And then at the contract level, we'll review the transmittal log under submittals, various topics under the document packages for return and permissions issues, finances. We have been getting a significant number of tickets at the help desk on contractors not really knowing how, not filling out invoices incorrectly, so we thought we'd add that guidance here. And then we'll look at the import network analysis schedule capability and finally some recent updates in QA/QC. So first up will be the district library, and these are the various modules we're going to be discussing today. So that's going to be the contract groups, custom reports, word templates, user-defined macros, and query definitions. So first up, a quick overview. This library is used to view and manage the data that's available throughout the district in RMS. Only district administrators can edit the data in this library, so keep that in mind. So first up, we have contract groups. You can set the groups that consist of contracts in this module that can be used for reports and for filtering in other areas. These contract groups can be added by manual selection or by using an SQL query. So the screen here is showing how to add a contract group using an SQL query. You'll just enter the text of that here, and if needed, you can enter parameters there. And then in this slide, we're showing how to manually select the contract or contracts that you want to include in the group. Whenever you click on the add button, a contract selection will come up and you can select multiple contracts here using the checkboxes provided. Okay, and here is a quick look at how you can use those groups in reports. You can use the contracts selected from contract groups option when that is present in the report parameters. And then when running the report, a selection will come up so that you can select the contract group that you'd like to use for the report. This is going to be available in both summary and contract reports. Not all of them, but certain ones, yes. Contract groups can also be used in the contract selection view using the filter using contract group button in the lower left corner of that view. When you click on this, again, it's going to bring up that same contract group selection. And then when selecting a specific contract group, the contract selection view will be filtered down to only display those contracts in that group. Moving on to custom reports. You can access the custom reports from the district library. And this is really not intended for use by the average user. It's going to require familiarity with the RMS database, the Telerik Report Designer application, and the SQL query language. So when you open the module, you can view the reports on the data grid by report title, author, report type, and which menu the report will be included in. And these menus are the same menus that show up in the summary reports and contract reports modules. When you add a custom report, this is the screen that will be presented. So we have the administrative stuff at the top, like the report title and description. The author will automatically populate with whichever user who created the report, but that can be changed if needed. For the report type, you can choose for the report to be at the contract or at the district level, and then we can specify which menu the report will show up in. We also have the required collections area, and this is where you will specify where the data for the report should pull from. This is going to open a list of query collections that can be used. And you may be wondering, how would you know which collection to use? And this slide covers how to get that information. So in most views in RMS, you can hold down the control key and right click on the screen, anywhere in the screen. And that's going to bring up this field information overlay view. This view displays the field information that can be used in custom report templates. At the top of the view should be the data source, and that is the name of the collection available for selection in custom reports. There's another way to gather field information for custom reports, and that's by taking advantage of the RMS Data Dictionary. This is a report that's available in the Summary Reports module, and it can list all of the collections available in RMS and also their respective fields. Running this report will be similar to running other RMS reports. You do have the parameters that can be entered before previewing the report. So in the range options, to display all of the tables available in the report, you can select the All Tables option. If you know the table that you're trying to look at, then you can select the Selected Tables option before previewing the report, and that will come up with a collections available for custom reports to be able to select the table to look at. The remaining fields in the custom report screen is going to be for the report designer contract ID field, which is where you can specify the contract that you want to pull data from. However, this is really only going to be for contract custom reports. Summary reports will not need the contract ID parameter. And if we look back at the top, we've got some further checkboxes. The under construction checkbox is just signifying whether this report is completed or if it is, as it states, still under construction. You can also specify where the report can be accessed from, either in contractor mode or government mode. You can also just select both of these, and that'll make sure that they're available in both government and contractor mode. Once you're ready to work on the custom report template, you can click on the Launch Telerik Report Designer button to bring up the Telerik Report Designer application. We have a pretty in-depth demo for Telerik on YouTube, and it is linked here on this slide, as well as on the references slide at the end of the presentation. So if you'd like to get more information on how to work in Telerik, check out that video. So moving on from custom reports, next up is going to be Word templates. These are created, as the name states, in Microsoft Word, and they're generally used to generate correspondence and other contract-related documents. So when you open the module, as we're showing here, excuse me, the Word templates are broken down by category and subcategories here at the top, and all the Word templates are listed. All the available Word templates are listed here. You can also look at the bottom section to see a list of the categories and subcategories available for use with the Word templates. These categories are presented when using the Generate Document button in a document package. That selection view is going to show a list of documents showing these categories. And so here we've listed those categories that are available and provided brief descriptions. And in the image below, we list the primary modules where those can be accessed, can be accessed from in each category. When templates are added, they can be added under whichever category makes the most sense. Subcategories can also even be added under the template categories as well if needed. So here's what the screen in RMS will look like when creating a Word template. These are the fields that are available. The subcategory field is going to allow you to assign the Word templates to a subcategory within the category selected at creation of the Word template. And the buttons at the bottom are those that will allow you to take action on the template, like create, edit, delete, import, export, and test. So now we're looking at adding a Word template to RMS. When you click on the Add button, you can either create a new document or you can copy an existing document and just make your desired edits to that. Sorry, making sure my microphone was right still. Okay. So before we get into reviewing Word macros, there is first some setup that needs to happen in Word if it's not already set up this way to be able to enter and view macros. So two things need to be set in Microsoft Word. First, the order that you make these updates in shouldn't matter, but in the File tab on Microsoft Word, if you go to the bottom of that menu and select the options, these windows will come up. Under the Customize Ribbon tab, make sure that the Developer tab is selected under the Customize the Ribbon section. And then in the Advanced tab, you're going to want to scroll down to show document content and make sure that the show field codes instead of their values checkbox is checked. And then to actually enter a macro into the Word document, you can hold down the Control key and press F9, which is going to bring up a set of curly brackets. And then within the curly brackets, you can type the name of the macro you want to use into the brackets as shown right here. So moving on, we're going to look at Word macros and user-defined macros in RMS. First things first, all the available Word macros in RMS can be found in the Summary Reports module. there is a report called RMS Word Macros. So if you search for that, it should pop right up. All the Word macros in RMS will be available in this report. You can use this with the field information overlay to get the field information we reviewed as part of custom reports for Word templates as well. So now we'll look at the user-defined macros that can be created in the district library in RMS. These will allow you to create a custom macro that can pull a unique set of data either from the contract or the office. There are two types of user-defined macros that can be created, a contract or a user-defined entry. So those macros, they may be created in the district library. However, the data that you want to populate into those macros is going to be entered in different areas at the office and contract level. So first here for contract user-defined entries, within the contract where you'll be using the macro, you can go to the contract user entries / special data module under the administration tab. And here the list of all the contract user-defined entries available for use in the contract will be listed. Just a note, the description of the macro, let me go back. Right here, this description is going to be what displays in the modules, not the name of the macro. So the data for UDF contract column in this case can be used to enter the values that you want to populate into the Word macro. You can just click into any of these fields and type the value. And then in the office, for office user-defined entries, the office user entries module within the local office menu is where you're going to enter the data to populate into office user-defined macros. When macros exist within Word templates, the values set here or at the contract level are going to populate into wherever they reside in the Word templates. We did link a video on the references slide. I'm not sure, I don't know if I see it on the slides. It is on the references slide for Word macros. So if you want more information, check that out. Okay, moving on from Word macros, we'll take a quick look at the query definitions in the district library. This module allows you to create custom aggregate queries at the district level. However, even though the query is created at the district level, you can still add constraints so that the data can be filtered at the contract level. And here's a quick breakdown of the screen you'll see when adding or editing a query definition. We have the query name and title, which are both entered at creation. But if needed, the title can be updated in the edit screen. And then, of course, a description for the query. And after that, the SQL text for the query can be entered in that box there. You can also enter criteria for parameters that can be set each time the query is executed. And then finally, at the very bottom, the execute query button does exactly what it says. It will execute the query and provide the results of that query. We linked a video here in this slide for how to create a query definition. So if you'd like more information, please see that video. All right. Before we move on to the staff record topics, I would like to pause and see if we can get some questions answered out of the way.
While we're taking this quick little break, for those of you that are only in on their phones, I would like to let you know there was a question in the chat that was asking about the RMS to PCF connection. That has been restored. Documents are now on the process of being sent to PCF. Due to the volume of documents that are currently in the backlog. It is going to take some time for all of them to get over to PCF, so just be patient. They will show up eventually. There was another comment about the issue with progress payments with the ability for the contractor to be able to enter data into the section where they request the dollar amounts for that. This is a known issue. We do have a dev item to correct this one. If you want to know when that's going to be sent, please submit a ticket and ask for updates for RMS Dev 4168.
All right. If there are no more questions, I think we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, so our next set of topics will be for staff records. We're going to look at the case sensitivity in the RMS ID and discuss the importance of that briefly. And then we'll do an overview of how to correctly link a staff record and also how to deal with an inactive staff record. So adding users to RMS is performed in the RMS staff module in the contract selection view, as I'm sure most of you are aware. And this is the responsibility of these district and system administrators for users in RMS. Those are the only users who will have full edit capabilities in this area. Office administrators do also have some edit capabilities here, but those are going to be restricted to providing contract rights within their specific office or providing office administrator rights, again, within their specific office only. Office administrators do not have the ability to link or unlink staff records, though, whether that be for CAC or non-CAC login. Okay, so when adding a user, you'll begin by typing in the RMS ID for the user. If the user will be working with sending payments to CFUMs, it is very, very important that their RMS ID entered here matches the login credentials in the CFUMs database for the contract. Usually that is going to be their UPass ID in all caps. This is very important because if their RMS ID doesn't match CFUMs, they won't be able to send payments to CFUMs from within RMS. So keep in mind that the RMS ID is case sensitive and it needs to match all the way down to the case. Otherwise, it will be invalid. For a user without a CAC, enter a unique alphanumeric identifier as the RMS ID. Once you have finished entering all the information for a user and you're ready to link the staff record to a user's CAC, you can click on the Link Staff Record button to make the user officially recognizable to RMS. The user's DoD ID on the back of the CAC will be needed here. In some rare cases, if the 10-digit DoD ID number is not working to get the staff record linked properly, then the 15-digit number on the back of the user's CAC may be used instead. That number should be on the back of the CAC just below the barcode. It may be in a different area, but there is a difference between the 10-digit and the 15-digit. Once that's been completed, the staff record will now be linked to the user and they will be able to log in with the corresponding credentials recorded in the staff record and access the data as determined in the staff record. Now to enable non-CAC login, you'll enter the email address used for the login. However, this user will not be able to access financial areas such as progress payments, contract setup, or summary reports. And please note that for this to be successful, the user must first have created an account in RMS with the email address used here. And then upon completion of linking the staff record, the user is going to be able to log into the district and access the areas specified. So now let's look at an incomplete staff record and how that's going to impact user access. So real quick, I want to just highlight some some really, really important stuff on the staff record here. On this slide, this is an incomplete staff record we're looking at. You can see that there is no CAC linked, non-CAC login has not even been enabled. And at the bottom, no rights have been granted to the user. So in order for a user to be able to access the areas they need to work in, both of these things need to be completed. As I just reviewed, to link the CAC to a staff record, the 10-digit DoD ID number on the back of the CAC must be entered. If that doesn't work, try the 15-digit number instead. And then to enable a non-CAC login, the email address for the user will be required for them to log in. So, however, just because the user can log in, that does not mean that they can access the districts or contracts that they need to work in. So this is where the user rights at the bottom come in. As a reminder, the RMS Support Center, us here, cannot grant users access to the districts. Those rights must be granted to the user in one of these 3 boxes by a district administrator. To make sure that these are set up properly, there's going to be some indicators that everything is filled in correctly, and that's what's shown here. These identifiers shown on the rights for the contract user role, and these are for the administrator rights. This person has full office administrator rights. If they had partial, it would say partial instead. If these identifiers are not present, then the user may be able to log in, like I mentioned, but they will not be able to progress any further into a district or into a contract if they don't have the proper assigned access and or user roles. So make sure that those are completely filled out when adding a user. Now, there also may be times when a user is marked inactive for a district, either due to a move or another similar reason, but they end up coming back or needing to regain access for some other reason. When trying to log back in, they get the message shown here on the slide and cannot log in as they did before. This can be corrected by a district administrator by going into the staff record and unchecking the inactive staff record staff member checkbox. This should not be the only step taken here. You should also make sure that the staff record is complete, everything is linked for the user to be able to log in, and any rights or access was updated as it needs to be for their new access. Okay, moving on, we will review our transmittal log topics. There seems to have been a trend with contractors sending incomplete or incorrect submittals through transmittals. So we thought it'd be a good idea to cover that all here with you so this guidance can be passed on to the contractors. Hopefully that'll cut down on the need for returns and recalls on transmittals. So just a brief overview of the transmittal log here. This area maintains the record of submittals made and the corresponding status. A transmittal can contain more than one submittal item if needed. Transmittals also aid in the generation of the digitally signed transmittal form ENG form 4025-R or just the ENG 4025. Before transmittals are started by the contractor, the submittal register and the specifications sections for the contract must be set up before submittals can be created and then combined into like types for transmittals. And part of a complete submittal register and specification setup is the completion of submittal items. These fields really need to be filled out completely and correctly to ensure as much success as possible in the transmittal log. If these fields aren't populated correctly, that's going to cause the government to have to take the next necessary steps to get the contractor to resubmit, or the government will need to recall a transmittal to make the corrections. These situations can cause interrupts with work, delays in review schedules, etc. So to avoid all that extra work and hassle, it will start with a fully completed and correct submittal item setup before initiating any transmittals. The government should be making sure that all the contractors are aware of the requirements for the submittals. After submittal item and submittal register setup is ready to go, transmittals can be started, and that's usually kicked off by the contractor. They'll begin by adding a draft transmittal to contain all the necessary documentation for a certain submittal item, including any supporting attachments and the ENG 4025. So here's a view of a draft transmittal in contractor mode. This is where the primary contractor reviewer and other fields for the submittal item can be filled in. All documents need to be added to the transmittal before the Create and Digitally Sign 4025 button is clicked. Once that process has been completed, the transmittal is going to go into government review, and adding further documents on the contractor side will not be allowed unless the government codes it appropriately and returns it for resubmission. And this is the government's view of the transmittal log. The main difference being that they don't have the draft transmittals tile, sort tile at the top, because the government's role in transmittals is really primarily for review and approval. When the government opens the transmittal to review it, the screen here will be displayed. Lots of actions can be taken here, including setting the QA code for the transmittal, setting the primary reviewer, adding government remarks or secondary remarks. And this is where the document package submitted by the contractor can be accessed as well. To complete transmittals in both government and contractor mode, there is a one-click functionality available. This action is going to complete or submit all the document packages that contain documents. If there are any unsigned ENG 4025s in the transmittal document package, RMS will provide a prompt to allow you to get that done before completing. After confirmation that the ENG 4025 has been signed, all the document packages will be submitted for review in contractor mode, and then in government mode, all the document packages will become accepted upon accepting the contractor submitted transmittal. Once completed and signed, the government's view of the transmittal will change, and most of the screen will become read-only. However, the recall transmittal button will activate if the government wants to return that from sending it back to the contractor. The add and delete buttons will be deactivated on the shared document package, and the government document package remains open for adding documents or document packages on the government side. The return process is a little different with transmittals that need to be returned back to the contractor because they have the QA codes that can be used for this purpose. So if a transmittal needs to be returned back to the contractor for corrections, the government will code it appropriately. Those codes that can be used for resubmission are highlighted here: C, E, G, and X. And then the corrections need to be communicated to the contractor either verbally or through the government remarks to contractor area. If needed, you can also the government can also add any supporting documentation to the shared document package if that will help with the corrections. The transmittal will be sent back to the contractor with the resubmittal code, and either a new document package with the corrections can be added to the existing transmittal, and that can be resubmitted, or a new transmittal can be started to redo the submittal altogether. Now, to recall the transmittal from the government's completion, the recall transmittal button has been added in government mode recently. So as shown here on the slide, the transmittal has been reviewed by the government and sent back to the contractor and completed. It looks like it's been acknowledged by the contractor as well. But let's say something in the QA code or the government remarks was either inaccurate or incorrect. So when going back into the transmittal after it's, whoops. So when going back into a transmittal after it's been accepted, the recall transmittal button is going to be active. And upon clicking on that, RMS is going to warn the user about what's going to take place. And then a transmittal recall reason will be recorded to complete the recall. That reason is going to be a required entry. So that it can be captured. The transmittal will be reverted back to the contractor's signed and submitted transmittal before the QA codes and signatures were applied by the government. When a recall is performed, that's going to be recorded as a recall revision in the revision history of the transmittal. If you select to view this recall version of the transmittal from the revision history, the version of the transmittal just as it was before the recall is going to be presented. In this view, the Show Recall Comments button will be available, and this will bring up the reason that was entered for the transmittal recall. Please keep in mind, this is not a return to contractor for corrections. As I mentioned previously, QA codes can be used for that purpose. This capability is to recall the transmittal back to the government from the contractor after it's been accepted by the government. When a transmittal is recalled, a new document package will be created for each new completion of the transmittal. So if you recall a transmittal twice more after its initial completion, there will be 3 total document packages on the transmittal. If the recall is performed on a fully completed transmittal with its document package having already been sent to PCF, then that document package will be locked down for any further edits. So any edits or new signatures applied to the ENG 4025 in the following recalls will only be added to the active document package. One final note to mention before we move on. The transmittal recall button will not be available for any transmittals that have been submitted before the release of patch 495, which was just last Thursday. So any transmittals that were submitted before last Thursday will not be able to be recalled. Okay, so next we're going to move on to how to resolve signing issues that result in the error shown here or similar errors. This is not the only error that can be caused by these issues. So this may be caused by updates made to Windows settings on contractor machines only. This is why we've added that warning here. Since this is dealing with the Windows settings of computers that are used to access RMS and not RMS itself, it is very important that before moving forward with these instructions or instructing a contractor to do so, their local IT support needs to be consulted beforehand. This is for configuring Windows permissions. So it could have an impact on other security software in use for the computer by IT, and you want to make sure that that doesn't impact anything like that. So to avoid that, any potential consequences of these updates need to be discussed with the local IT support. So to attempt to resolve this issue, if you've gotten the go-ahead or if the contractor has gotten the go-ahead, go to the file path shown here. To get to the machine keys folder, right-click on the machine keys folder and choose properties, and then go to the security tab. So on the security tab, First, you're going to want to check the everyone or the username line in the group or username section and take a look at the permissions listed at the bottom. First, if there is no checkbox by full control, the full control permission, then that is a pretty good indication that these permissions are incorrect and will need to be updated. The contractor should go ahead and consult IT to discuss updating those permissions to fix the signing issue. If there is no checkbox by the full control permission, but there is one by the special permissions box, there's not one here, but if there was a special permissions checkbox instead of a full control, then that is when the contractor should follow these steps with permission from IT to see what permissions they do have and if they need to or can be updated. So to do this, they need to go into the advanced settings to view the permissions allowed. And within the, within the advanced security settings for RSA window, you can select whichever one, the users or everyone. And if the permissions can be changed, the administrator on the computer will use this change permissions button. But just to view them, you can click on that view button to see if they are correct. It should look the same as what's shown here on this slide. If the permissions listed for the contractor are incorrect, then as I mentioned, the change permissions button can be used to do that, but only by an administrator on the computer, as indicated by the shield on the button. This is where IT comes in to help make sure that those updates are deemed allowable after discussing it with them. If the permissions on the contractor computer are incorrect, like I mentioned, they should consult their local IT support on updating those permissions. If they agree and those are updated, the contractor should try signing again and see if that was the fix for their issue. If not, either IT will not allow the update or some other reason, the contractor should take advantage of the manually attached Sign 4025 button available in Transmittals. This would take some extra work with signing outside of RMS and uploading to RMS, but it also may be quicker than dealing with the IT department. All right, that concludes our transmittal log discussion. So now we'll move on to the document packages topics. We'll do a brief overview of file types and size limitations, and then discuss how to deal with password protective documents. We'll then review return for corrections or reject in all areas where it's available, and we'll finish up by looking at what document previews for those with limited permissions look like. Multiple types of documents can be uploaded into RMS document packages as listed here, but each attachment cannot exceed 500 megabytes in size. Please do keep in mind that that is per attachment and not for the document package in its entirety. When a PDF or Word document is password protected and uploaded to RMS, RMS will not allow signatures to be added to that document. This is the message that RMS will present. And to fix this, you'll just need to contact the creator or the uploader of the document and get them to re-upload the document or the attachment without the password protection, or obtain the document without the password protection and re-upload it yourself or themselves. Once document packages are fully populated and ready to go, some of them will be accompanied by the buttons shown here. In contractor mode, the submit button will be available for submitting to the government, and the government will have the complete accept and return buttons. These buttons will perform whichever action is selected on all document packages within the document package data grid. So if you'd like to only perform those certain actions on individual document packages, then you'll need to go into the specific document package and use the buttons within the actual document package if available. The return and reject capabilities vary throughout RMS, so that we thought it'd be a good idea to review all those here. These are all of the areas with the return or reject capabilities. So let's look at those in detail. First up is going to be correspondence. To return a correspondence back to the contractor for corrections, check the return for correction checkbox. This is going to be return the correspondence to the draft letter not complete sent status, and the document package will also reflect the return for corrections status when that checkbox is checked automatically. Next is for RFIs. To return an RFI in the Government Response tab, there is a Return to Contractor for Corrections button. Upon clicking that, you'll be prompted to confirm that. And when you click on yes, the RFI, or when clicking on yes, the RFI will be returned to the contractor RFIs preparing sort tile in contractor mode, and the document package status will reflect return for corrections. Contractor payrolls can also be rejected. When that needs to happen, the corrections can be communicated in the government comments box, and the payroll rejected checkbox can be checked. When that checkbox is checked, the payroll will be returned as a problem payroll, and the document package will reflect the return for correction status automatically. Contractor insurance may also be returned if needed using the document package within the contractor insurance can be returned using the return button outside the document package there or within the document package. Once returned, the document package will reflect the return for correction status for both government and contractor mode. Next up is returning an invoice back for corrections. When a payment needs to be returned for corrections, you can click on that Return for Corrections button in the Invoice tab. A prompt will appear to confirm the return, and another prompt will show guiding the government to communicate the required corrections to the contractor and await resubmission. The government should be letting the contractor know that the payment is being returning, and resubmission will be required as well. Recently, an update was made. A payment can be returned as long as no approvals have occurred in CFUMS. So even if the payment has been sent from RMS to CFUMS, if it has not been approved at all, it can still be returned to the contractor for corrections. When that payment is returned, in contractor mode, it's going to show back up as incomplete, and the notice at the bottom will let the contractor know that the payment has been returned for corrections. All right, next is for QC daily reports in government mode. These can also be returned. There are two ways that QC daily reports can be returned in government mode. So the first way is within the actual report, the return to contractor for corrections checkbox can be used. This will return the report back to the contractor as not completed - returned for corrections. And the second way reports can be returned, QC daily reports can be returned, can also be performed on multiple reports at once in the QC daily report selection view. This can only happen in the completed QC reports tile. Under this tile, the return to contractor for corrections column will become activated. And the return to contractor for the return to contractor checkboxes can be checked for multiple reports at once. And upon doing so, again, the reports will return back to the contractor as not completed, returned for corrections. Before performing these returns, it will be pretty immediate, so make sure that you have reviewed these reports before returning them, or whoever is reviewing them. All right. Three-phase inspection document packages can also be returned for corrections using the return button on the document package data grid. If there is more than one document package there, that action is going to be taken on all of those document packages. But if you'd like to just return a single document package, you can go into the document package edit view and use the return for corrections button there. Once it's returned, the contractor's view of the document package will reflect the return for correction status. Activity hazard analyses can also be rejected by clicking on the Reject Hazard Analysis button. The AHA will be sent to the return for correction status in the selection view for both government and contractor mode. Once the hazard analysis has been returned, the document package will reflect the return for correction status, and the Submit for Government Review button will reactivate in contractor mode. Exposure hours can also be returned for corrections by selecting the hours not accepted, return to contractor for corrections radio button. When that is checked, rejecting exposure hours, or the warning below will be provided, letting the government know that rejecting the exposure hours will disable the government menu. Once the report has been returned, the exposure hours will be returned to the not completed status in the selection view, and the document package will reflect the returned for correction status. So those were the returns and rejections in RMS. If you have further questions, please, of course, reach out to us at the help desk. We'll be happy to provide more information. So now let's move on and look at viewing document packages with read-only permissions. When a user has read-only permissions for a certain document package and attempts to open the files to view it, those files are going to open up in a read-only state. So here we're showing a PDF file from a read-only user's perspective. It's going to open in the RMS document viewer. The Microsoft applications are a little bit different. For Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint files, this pop-up shown here will be presented before opening the file in the restricted mode of the corresponding application. Microsoft Word files are going to open the same as the PDF in the RMS document viewer. All right, moving on from document packages, we'll now look at the finance topics. First, we're going to look at how to review, we're going to review how a contractor submits an invoice to the government. And then we'll discuss how failure to finalize SDEF/XML import affects progress payments, and caution you on what not to do when a progress payment is pending. Okay, so as most of you already know, this is just some basic information that needs to be known or completed before payments can begin. If the contractor schedule type is set up for a network analysis schedule on the government side in contract setup, the progress payment module will allow the contractor to import a pay request via a schedule import. Okay, the first step in processing a pay request is going to be for the contractor to enter the percent or dollars for each activity and generate the pay request report. When RMS is ready for the new pay request to be started, that's going to be shown at the bottom of the screen. Whichever number is shown here is the pay request number. And when the contractor clicks on that button, they'll be able to open the pay request. Before the payment is started, if there are any issues with finances, RMS will let the user know. RMS can identify the problem, but solving the problem is going to take some work and coordination between the government and the contractor. Just a quick note about this image here. This CLIN 0007 is not balanced with activities. We have gotten some questions regarding this message. So the CLIN message shown here is not for an imbalanced CLIN. This message is to let the user know that the activity is not balanced with the CLIN. So just wanted to clear that up since we've had those questions before. In the Requested Activity Earnings tab, the amount requested in the invoice can be entered. If a contract is using amount CLINs as opposed to quantity CLINs, it's going to be best to enter the amount into the field instead of the percentage or quantity fields for amount CLINs. Similarly, quantity type CLINs, it will work better to enter the quantity values for that rather than the amount. If there's a need to reset or clear all the entries made to these columns, the contractor can click on the Copy Previous Activity Earnings box or button. And this is going to update all the requested earnings to the previous earnings all at once. So the contractor can use this tool to reset the payment or pay request back to $0. Next, the Requested CLIN Earnings tab. This is a read-only view that summarizes the results of the activity earnings entered on the Requested Activity Earnings tab we just reviewed. The amounts shown in the CLIN summary at the bottom of the view will change to reflect the amounts for the CLIN that's highlighted or selected in the table above. This is just a more detailed view of the information entered in the Requested Activity Earnings tab. All right, for the Subcontractor Earnings tab. First things first, the contractor should consult their government representative if doing any subcontractor deductions to make sure it's okay to do those. Otherwise, the contractor should not be asking for the amount of money on the activities if they don't believe that the contractor met the requirements, the subcontractor met the requirements of the activity that will be paid. This should first be determined and discussed with government representation in great detail to ensure that it's acceptable for the subcontractor earnings to be deducted by the contractor and that that's added in the invoice by the contractor. The value entered here should not be a negative number. As the column states, that value is being considered as deducted, subcontractor earnings deducted by contractor. So the negative will not be necessary there. So if the contractor was subcontracted out for $10,000 and only $7,000 will be paid on the activity, then the subcontractor earnings deducted by the contractor value entered here should be $3,000, not negative $3,000. RMS will convert that value appropriately when performing the calculations for the invoice. When the contractor is ready to return the amount that they've deducted to the subcontractor, they will reduce it down to 0 here or reduce it down by however much they're willing to give at a certain time. So in my example, the contractor withheld $3,000 from the $10,000 that they were expected to pay. And now if the subcontractor has finished half of the leftover work, then that $3K can be reduced down to $1,500 here. If you have any more questions about that, please reach out to the help desk. When there are circumstances that require a request for additional earnings, that is going to be included on the pay activities. This adjustment is added to the pay request on the additional earnings tab as shown here. Whether or not this information can be added will be dictated by contract setup and district office and contract policies. All right, next is the Payment POCs tab. It is very important that the information entered into this tab is filled out completely and correctly before the requested earnings complete checkbox is checked. Once the contractor checks that checkbox, the government will have to return the payment for corrections in order for the contractor to add any information that was missed. Once all 5 tabs for the invoice have been completed, the contractor can go to the document package tab and finish up by entering the pay period through and payment invoice dates, and also checking the requested earnings complete checkbox. Checking that checkbox will generate the prompt pay report in the document package, but the document package will not have been submitted to the government just yet. At this point, technically the payment is done, but the prompt pay report still needs to be signed and the document package still needs to be completed and submitted. So if needed, other document packages or other supporting documents can be added to the document package. And once everything's been added, the prompt pay report can be signed and the document package can be submitted to the government for review, either from within the document package as shown here, or using the submit button on the outside of the document package. Once the prompt pay report has been signed, the key icon will display on the document package to signify that it has been signed by the contractor, and the document package status will change to in review. All right, and we do have some notes here about viewing and editing progress payments. First things first, there can only be one open invoice in a contract at all times. Or at any time, my apologies. When a progress payment is pending, you should not, or the contractor or the government should not be completing a contract modification, completing another progress payment, or updating the activity schedule. These could have negative results on future payments or future schedule imports as well. All right, now that we've discussed finances, let's take a look at the import network analysis schedule module. We'll look at how to finalize an import into the contract and into payment for a contract. And we'll also review how to read and understand the screens associated with the import. And then we'll review how to deal with mismatched activity codes and how it will impact the import. First, a brief overview of the capabilities in this module. This module was designed to be able to import contractor schedule data as well as some financial data into RMS with the use of an SDEF or XML file created from P6. When a file has been added for import, this is the view that will be presented. At the top of the screen, some information that was entered at creation will be displayed along with the buttons that can be used to take action on the import. We have the approve request to import, preview data into contract, preview import earnings into payment, and finally reject request to import. For the preview import earnings into payment, This preview is going to be inaccessible by the government if the contractor has already started a payment. However, since this action creates a new invoice on the contractor side, if they enter this preview while they have a draft progress payment in progress already, that's going to wipe out whatever invoice is already created and fill it in with the information from the import. So please make sure that contractors are aware of this. If they have an invoice started already, not submitted, but already started, entering the preview import earnings into payment screens is going to wipe out that draft invoice. Now, if the invoice is currently in review by the government, then neither government mode or contractor mode will be able to access the preview import earnings into payment screens. Please also keep in mind that the preview import earnings into payment is not a required avenue for creating payments. This is going to using payments in this way is going to be dependent on the contract, the scheduler, and the scheduling software, etc., stuff like that. Also in that screen is going to be the Activities tab, which is a list of all the activities included in the schedule file. The Calendars tab, which will show the calendar data for the schedule file. And then whether you're using an SDEF or XML file, that third tab is going to adjust to whichever file is being used. And the original data from the SDEF or XML file is going to be displayed in that tab. Okay, so when performing the preview data import into contract action, it's going to show the activity import preview as shown here. At the top of the view is a grid displaying the activity ID, description, and import status for that activity. The import status is going to be the most important part, and it's going to provide an important but brief indication of how the activities will be treated. Two major indicators to look out for on this screen is going to be anything in red. It's usually a bad sign. And then also look for the keyword invalid. If there's an activity that is showing in red here, then whoever's importing the schedule needs to make sure that this activity has not been paid on. If the activity is under the same name but just has a different activity ID than what's already been used, then this schedule should not be approved for import. A fix needs to be made in the scheduling software to realign the activity IDs. If the activity has already been paid on and it's deleted following this import, as it says it's going to be here, then that's going to result in negative numbers showing in the progress payment, which is really best to be avoided. This can be fixed, but like I mentioned, it's best to take all the necessary steps possible to avoid negative numbers like that. If the word invalid is showing in the import status, then a closer review is going to be needed to see what the issue is. So for this situation right here specifically, it looks like the category codes in this scheduling software for that activity do not match what is available in the district and RMS. So to view what will be changed as indicated there, you can select the activity. And when an activity is selected, the middle section of the import activity, the activity import preview, is going to show a read-only view of the information for each pay activity from the schedule. The details of what is changing, if something is invalid, can be viewed here, even if RMS might not go through with importing that. The information shown here is going to change and reflect the data for each activity that's selected from the table we just reviewed here. The bottom section of the activity import preview contains more information about the data within the schedule and how it will be added to RMS. The subcontractor codes to be added to the contract and the features of work to be added to the contract boxes are only going to show the new features and subcontractors being added to the contract through the import. The last box shown here, the CLIN balances, including scheduled data box, is going to be really helpful to see if the totals for CLINs and activities will be balanced or unbalanced after the import. Of course, the red is going to indicate an improper balance. This box compares the current CLIN balance or the current amount column to the sum of the total schedule activities linked to the CLINs or the activity total column. Be sure to use these scroll bars here to make sure that everything in these boxes is being properly reviewed. And once the scheduler or the importer or whoever is reviewing this information has verified that everything is ready to go, the import data into contract button in the bottom right will execute the import process for the schedule file. Please note that it's usually the responsibility of the contractor to import the data into the contractor after the government has approved the schedule for import. Importing data into contract should always be performed before importing into a payment if the contractor is doing that. If the current activities in RMS don't match those in the schedule file, then it really won't make sense to attempt to import into an invoice beforehand. To perform the preview import into earnings into payment action, the contractor cannot have a progress payment that is still pending. RMS will provide alert if this is attempted. Just a reminder, if the contractor has a payment started already, then if they perform this action, the information in that draft payment in progress is going to be overwritten with the information from this import. Also, if the invoice is in review already, if the open invoice is in review already, then the government nor contractor can perform this action. After clicking on the preview import earnings into contract button, RMS will create a new payment as long as the last payment has been accepted in CFUMS. And for each activity row in the grid, RMS is going to provide useful information as it relates to the payment status. Okay, and so now let's look at the failure to finalize an import. If an import is not finalized, these issues may occur as a result. The contract schedule may show an activity has a dollar amount associated with it, but in RMS, it's still going to show $0 until the schedule import has been finalized. If it doesn't get finalized, this can cause shortage issues with payment requests. Also, the activity scheduled dates will not generate until the import has been finalized. And that's only if the contract is set up to allow actual dates to be entered via a schedule import in contract setup. So if that setting is set, then until the schedule import is finalized, those activity schedule dates are not going to appear. You want to make sure, or the government or the contractor wants to make sure that the date imported and the date invoice imported or the date invoice imported dates are filled in to ensure that the import did complete. If a date is missing here, then the import didn't finalize and the most current data is not in RMS. If there's a date in the date invoice imported, but no date in the date imported column, then that payment is going to have to be redone since the most current schedule data was not imported first. So the schedule import will need to be completed, and the import invoice will need to be redone. The invoice will need to be the original invoice will need to be deleted as well. Okay, now for our final set of topics, we're going to review some recent significant updates to the QA/QC areas in RMS. So a quick overview. To assist with the QA processes, updates have been made to numerous modules in this tab. And we'll start with the QC daily reports in government mode. A new function has been added to the government mode view where multiple reports can be accepted all at once. Please note that some of the daily reports that show in this view when choosing to multi-accept daily reports, some of those may show as accepted already, and that's just due to previously accepted document package statuses. If the report shows as accepted, then it's due to one of two possibilities. The document packages has been completed, but the report has not been completed, or there are multiple document packages and only the first one had been accepted while the subsequent packages were not. The multi-accept operation is going to mark all these lingering reports and/or document packages as accepted. Before performing this action, please do make sure that reports are multi-accepted have all been reviewed. After acceptance, the reports cannot be returned for further review or corrections. Check the office policy in the local office menu to see if the office is set to allow edits on a completed report within a certain amount of days following the completion of that report or the report from the day before. All right, next up, we have some revision history updates that were made here. We did review them earlier in the recent updates, but we added those here for QA/QC. Revision history has been added to QA daily reports. Since multiple signatures and/or approvals are needed for QA daily reports, the document package has to be handled separately from the report itself. So once the report is completed, the complete button has been added to the document package grid as well, and that can be used to complete all the document packages within the document package grid. And then to submit only individual document packages, enter the document package and click on the complete package button in there instead. Revision history was also added to the QC daily and QC dredge reports in government mode, not just in government mode, in both contractor mode and government mode. In this slide, we are showing both government and contractor mode views to show the difference in the buttons available for the document package in each mode. In contractor mode, the document package has to be completed independently of the report itself, so it does contain the submit button on the outside of the document package as well as within the document package. But in government mode, that's not the case. When the government checks the accept report checkbox, this accepts all the document packages in the report as well. And then same for return to contractor for corrections. If it's returned, all of the document packages will be returned as well. Next, back in QA daily reports, specifically the deficiency submodule, revision history has been added to the document package within the deficiency submodule for a QA daily report. It is not within the deficiency screen for QA daily reports, only in the document package. The document package for deficiencies can be submitted, accepted, and/or returned using the buttons provided on the document package data grid for all the document packages. So that is part of the update too, is adding those buttons. Revision history was also added to the document packages in the QA tests module, which can also be accessed from within the QA daily reports as well through the QA test submodule. Same situation here for the buttons. This document package is not integrated with the completion of a QA test, so that button has been added to the outside of the document package, and it can be performed within the document package as well by clicking on the complete package button. Revision history was also added to the document packages in the three-phase inspections module. Again, these document packages aren't tied to the completion of the inspection checks, so those will have to be handled separately using either the buttons added outside the document package or the buttons that are available within the document package for each document package. Hazard analysis also has review or revision history, and this is going to be an area where the work performed on a hazard analysis is integrated with the handling of the document packages. When a hazard analysis or AHA is submitted and accepted or rejected, the document package status is going to follow suit with whichever action is taken on the hazard analysis. Please keep in mind that hazard analyses cannot be returned after they have been accepted. So the government really needs to make sure that a full review is performed on these before accepting them. Exposure hours also now have revision history, and this document package is also integrated with the actions taken on the exposure hours themselves. So when the exposure hours report is submitted and accepted or rejected, again, the document package will do the same. Exposure hours also cannot be returned after they've been accepted. So again, the government needs to make sure that they're doing a full review before accepting because it cannot be returned. Since the document package is now integrated with actions taken on exposure hours, a new prompt will appear at the completion of exposure hours in contractor mode. When completing this report, the new prompt will inform contractors of the results of each action that can be taken. Clicking yes will complete and also digitally sign the exposure hours report. Clicking no will complete the report without signing it, and clicking on cancel will leave the prompt without completing or signing the report. Okay, and that was our last update to review for QA/QC, and that also concludes our presentation portion of the training. Here are some links that we've added. We've got our previous brown bag videos. We didn't add our previous train the trainer videos, so that's probably I think we'll probably do that before we get those back on the website today. We've got the linked training videos, so those are the ones that are linked within the slides already. And then also the recent update / new feature demonstrations. And then, of course, as for all the trainings, we've got these general links for our RMS website, the RMS Support Center YouTube channel, the service desk to contact the help desk, the help desk phone number, and the KM portal link. Okay, so now we will open up the floor for anyone to unmute and ask a question or have some discussion.
So there is a question in the chat right now. It's asking, it says, please show us the link for the standard system milestones with calculations. I'm not entirely sure I understand what this question is. You also asked for standard QA plan with calculations. Could you elaborate a little bit more, please? All right, so it looks like the question is BOD equals CRD plus 60 days. Oh, so you're talking about the calculations in the milestones themselves. So basically, if you have a milestone, a system milestone that's based off of another milestone, that's based off of how you guys want to have that set up. We do not have access to standard QA plans for those particular things. That is based off of each district and how the district wants to do them. You can actually set those up in any way, shape, or form that you would want to do. So if you go into the system milestones, the easiest way is go to the milestones, click on the sort tile for system so that you can see just the system milestones, and then double click on the one that you want, in your case, the BOD. And then at that point, you have a couple of different options depending on the system milestone. I know there's at least one system milestone that you cannot make any changes for how it's calculated and taken care of. But for the most part, most of them, you can either manually enter what the schedule date is. Now, all of this stuff that I'm talking about is for the scheduled dates for these milestones. The actual dates, of course, are manually entered. But the CRD plus 60 days, that can be determined by clicking on the option to use it based off of another milestone. And that can be a district milestone or an office milestone. It just depends on how you guys want to use it. And as my colleague stated, milestone calculations and QA plan calculations are up to each PDT team based on district policy and the needs of the project. All right. Are there any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat, and I don't hear anybody unmuting. We'll give you a couple more minutes. If you do have questions, please let us know, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. Okay, since there are no more questions, we're going to go ahead and close it out. Want to thank everybody for joining us today. We do appreciate that you joined. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always give us a call at the help desk at 442-333-1011. If at any point in time you call us and we don't answer the phone, please leave a voicemail because we do actually call you back. Please leave your name, your phone number, and your email address, and we will get back to you usually on the same day to try and help you out with that. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for joining, and I hope you have a fabulous day.